All right, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Stu and the Nunn. I hate that I have a little bit of lag there. I don't know if you can see me in real time, but I am with Deputy One Time, Mr. Matt Thomas here, back with us again. Another episode here. Thank you, and author of the just released award-winning book, getting critical acclaim around the globe, and that you can find at every book outlet where you can find great books. Interceptors. Hey, Matt, welcome back to the show. Can you hear me? Are you frozen? You have a bad connection again, it shows. Well, luckily you're not making a weird face. You're just sitting there.
Here we go. Are we back on?
I got you. I can hear you.
Dude, I don't know what the fuck is going on with this thing.
But you're frozen, just looking very stoic and professional.
I don't know what is going on with this because I'm full bars on my Wi-Fi.
You're back on full. You're showing good here. It keeps coming and going. Now you're back to one. You went from 4 to 1, but I've lost your video again.
Okay.
But I can hear you. So
That's crazy.
we'll, even with our new format and new everything, the technical demons haunt us.
Dude, Murphy's Law, brother.
Yes, it is. Maybe we said something the last time we talked, and they're jamming your signal there.
Yeah, dude. The NSA and CIA and all those 3-letter agencies are all over me here.
They must have mistaken that I said something bad about my Orcus. You didn't, but they came after you.
Right.
But well, it's a black screen, but we have your name, so at least they can hear you. This is weird. We just did we've had no problems before, and now all of a sudden we have issues.
Yeah, I don't know.
And you're out there in a beautiful open state of Arizona. Great sky shot to the satellites overhead. And now here we go. We're coming back. I think you're coming back. I can still hear you, but yeah, it is. You got what do you got? Dude. Comcast, Spectrum, Fios. What you got out there?
I got some Cox cable going on here.
Oh, that's it. I didn't want to. Yeah. It's a cable company. We won't say the name, but they rhyme with rooster.
Yeah.
Oh man. All right. Well, I got MT up there, so we got your initials. Let's see if we can. We'll keep going. If we can bring your ugly mug up there, we'll definitely will and keep working it. But let's let's get this out. So hey, thank you again, Matt, for coming back on and joining us here on Stu and the Nunn. Talk about a lot of important topics. You bring a great perspective as a Pinal County Sheriff in Arizona, or Chief Deputy Sheriff, actually, to be as the correct title. And like I said, now author, and you've been doing it for 30 years, even though most people would doubt that because you look so young and everything. And but hey, I call it a pandemic because I call anything that just happens that takes lives and hurts people and just can't seem to be solved and everything as it's not just a virus out of China, made in a lab in China, but just anything that's sweeping our country and hurting our people as a pandemic. And one thing we have is I remember back when Columbine happened, and that was really one of the first large scale school shootings, especially by youth, but just school shootings that happened in a school in a long time. And that kind of serves, in my opinion, I don't know if it's correct or not, as the kind of the start of it all. And it's happened many times since. And now, we've had a number of them. We had the one at the Uvalde, we had Newtown, we had Parkland. Now we have this one in Nashville. And it's not just schools, right? We've had a number of churches and many other what can be considered soft targets, right? Theaters, so on and so forth. But this recent one definitely stands apart for a couple of reasons. One, it was a Christian school, and I can't remember of a Christian school that's been attacked. And two, a transgender, because when it first came out that it was a woman that did the shooting, all the pontificators, got on the news shows and were like, it's so rare, it never happens, it's always dudes. And little did we know at the time, no, it's a woman just wanting to be a dude. So it was the first transgender one in a Christian. I won't say the first transgender. There's been several, three or four or five in the last couple of years, but the first one at a Christian school, which leads a lot of people to think there were maybe motivations or reasons why this happened. But
Right.
that's the one that just happened. 3 adults killed, 3 innocent 9-year-old children killed. Um, and it's just another, sign of just evil lives all around us. Um, as a sheriff's deputy, you've been for 30 years. I mean, obviously, this is again another thing, an active shooter in a business, in a school, whatever, something you guys train for. What is kind of your thoughts on this as we learn more and more in the last couple of days with the releasing of the body cam footage and everything else about the shooting that just sticks with you, I guess? Or
I think one of the biggest things that sticks with me is just uh, how heroic the officers were in this case, compared to some where we've seen some failures, right, in the past. And I think, unfortunately, for the law enforcement world, this has become a thing for us. And Columbine did kind of start it off, but this has become a thing for us, and we have trained in different methodologies for active shooters, and it has kind of progressed over time. And I think that it shows well in this case that these officers, not only had they had some training for this type of incident, but they had mentally prepared themselves for this type of confrontation, because you can critique anything, right? So you could
right,
look at their body cam and you could say, oh, they should have done this here, they should have done that there. But ultimately, what they did is they pressed towards the problem, and when they found the problem, they eliminated the threat, and that's what we want. That's what we
right.
want them to do. And we can look backwards at other shootings where that failed to happen and more lives were lost, and that's the last thing that we want as police officers, is for lives to be lost. And anytime we can intervene in that, I think we all have. You don't necessarily swear an oath to lose your life, but you have an understanding that that's kind of the greatest sacrifice you could ever make. Is if I can forfeit my life and save somebody else's, especially children, then so be it. And that's what I signed up for. And I think these guys did a phenomenal job in doing just that, saving some lives.
Yeah, I mean, it's like you said, it's like those in the military, right? They're signing up willing to give their life for their country. For a law enforcement officer, you're signed up willing to give your life for your community if it comes to it. But it's definitely not the first option,
Right.
not your first path in your career to
Right.
do that. But you're willing to do it, and yeah, I mean, this, you see when you go back, and I've watched the footage 4 or 5 times. You see guys in various states. Some are in full uniform, they were on duty. Others look like they probably got called in, probably a SWAT or SRT member that got called in, threw their stuff on, whatever it may be. Maybe they were undercover and just, grabbed the stuff out of their vehicles. Luckily, they had a great teacher outside. I mean, just when you look at, I was kind of breaking it down, just looking at the way the things, people like me and you look at it, it's like, wow, she had enough foresight. She was outside. She gave them clear, concise direction. She was very calm. She gave them the basic information they needed to know where to go. And then they got in there and, started executing room clearing, which they had to do. They had no idea where the shooter was until they heard the shooter shoot from the second floor at some of the cop cars, and they redirected. They
Right.
knew what they had to do, and they moved right to the threat as soon as they were able to verify where it was. Noting
Right.
they didn't know how many there was. There could have been more than one, right? But they
Right.
still they didn't take one room at a time and all that stuff. They went to where the first threat they knew of, and exposed themselves. And I think some people may not realize that when they ran down those halls and ran, there could have been other shooters and they could have been waiting on them, but they had to get to the one that they knew about.
Right.
And I
Right.
think it did demonstrate a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's again that their training kicked in, and I can guarantee you, if you look at that group of officers, and we all fear death, right? So in a situation like that, you're going to have different officers acting different ways. I think you had some good leadership in that crew of officers that went to eliminate that threat, because I guarantee you, and I've had this happen to me, I guarantee you at some point there was one or two of those officers that weren't sure, like, I don't really know that I want to go down this hallway, but you had some good officers saying, let's go, let's go, let's go, and keeping them focused on the task at hand and pushing that forward towards that problem. And then ultimately they got there and handled business like they should have. and
Yeah.
good for them for sending that person where they needed to be.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. There's sometimes they come up and they pat a guy on the back. Let's go, let's go. They just there's part of our human nature. You want to survive. There's an apprehension to poke your head out or go something without knowing where the threat is, and
Right.
that's natural, right? And it's nothing to be. It's not like the guy in Parkland who just sat outside the school the whole time, or worst case, if we were to look at Uvalde and what happened there, which is still I think
Right.
baffles many of our minds of how that could have happened. But they went down there, and as soon as they knew in that hallway, in that opening, like wherever that kind of big opening room, almost like an entry of a library or something, that they found the shooter in by the windows. I mean, as soon as they went in, the guy with the long gun, that officer, he went to that far side so he could clear that corner.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't even say pied it. He just blew right into that pie and took out the threat. And then, they lifted and shifted. They had great fire discipline and muzzle awareness. And that a second one came in with the other officer with his handgun and put the saw movement and did what he had to without
Yeah.
risking anything. And it was
And I would say it makes a great case because we've come a long ways in law enforcement with the weaponry that we're carrying to deal with problems, and rifles being one of those weapons that is very commonly carried now to deal with stuff just like this. But as we have those long guns, the LPVO is something that has, and you'll hear it on that tape. He's calling for the LPVO up, LPVO up, and so he's calling for not only that rifle but the rifle with optics on it, so that they can take that long shot under optics. That's something I know here in Arizona that we've been training more and more on, like our tactical teams, and even down into the patrol level. And obviously Tennessee's doing the same. And I think you're going to see a big push for that type of stuff too, is getting glass on those rifles and getting optics that allow them to magnify a little bit to get those longer shots, because we're having to take longer and longer shots in some of these engagements with bad guys.
right. Yeah, it's not just the lone sniper and the SRT or SWAT team that can do it, right? Any of them got to be
Right.
ready to have those tactics. Yeah. For those that don't know, the black box I'm talking to is Pinal County Sheriff's Deputy Matt Thomas that may be tuning in, and we're just having some video problems, but it will. Well, we're still working on that. But anyways,
Yeah.
yeah. So another group I want to highlight out of that is whereas we've learned more is the head the head mistress or head president, or I'm not sure the title they used for her, but the one lady that was killed who was in charge of the school. Reports are coming out now that when she was I read today, she was on a Zoom call for a meeting. She heard the shots, ended the call, got up and ran right there, and they found her in the hallway. She was charging at the shooter and
Yeah.
and went right there. And another thing I heard was that she was private Christian school. She had actually just reinforced or taken her staff and faculty through not just active shooter training recently, but advanced active shooter training, and there's initial crediting of that for why, as you saw the footage, it looks like there's no students in that school. They locked
Right.
that place down tight. I mean,
Right.
and they're crediting that training that she had them go through for securing and protecting the students they could, and for that, and also the fact that, like I say, the reports are now they think she was charging towards the shooter like we would expect a law enforcement officer to do who's armed. Obviously, she was not armed and was just going to try to confront, which I think is quite heroic and awesome itself.
Yeah,
Not
absolutely. And to her credit, if the school has underwent training, the recent training, the training that is now out there, as a result of these past incidents, what is happening is they are realizing that the just hiding is not working, right? That is giving these active shooters easy targets. And so I know we've had these discussions that if you can barricade yourself in some place, that's cool. But as a homicidal maniac tries to make their way into a room, if you cower in a corner, you're all dying in that corner. And I think these teachers are gaining an understanding of that. And God bless these teachers and these administrators, especially in this school, because they understood that if it comes down to it and it's them or the kids, they're going to sacrifice so that those kids are saved. And I think we saw it in this case because while we had loss of life, which is horrible, I think it was very much minimized in this case.
Yes, yes, and the intestinal fortitude, as we would say in the army, of her doing that, and possibly who knows what the others went through. And I'm sure more reports will come out. But also, the report of the one little girl, I don't remember, or I think her last name is Dykehouse. The reports are from her that she was reaching or had reached the fire alarm to alert her that when she was shot, to alert all of her the people in the school. So this 9-year-old little girl was either had triggered the fire alarm or was going for it when she was murdered by this sicko. And just to think that a child like that probably shows demonstrating more courage and bravery and selflessness than probably most people you and I know together collectively.
Oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
And I mean, it just breaks your heart, one, to lose life, but two, to think what an awesome person this young girl would have become, or what mass. I mean, I just, my heart bleeds. My wife and I were talking tonight, just cannot imagine, as we are parents of and now grandparents, the pain that these families must be going through, to have your 9-year-old, or even the family members of the adults, but still to have your 9-year-old ripped from you, so young, and just so violently just stolen from you. Just, I can't imagine how they're
Yeah,
feeling.
and same with me as a parent and a grandparent. I mean, it just, when you see any of these reports, it just rips your heart out of your chest because and especially those of us in law enforcement who have dealt with death on a daily basis, how bad this is, and the pain and the anguish that is going to follow, especially when you're talking about kids. And there was one report that I was watching as it was kind of breaking news, and the buses were passing by, and one of the reporters commented that the buses are going by full of kids to a staging location where the parents are waiting to see if their kid is going to get off the bus or not. And I thought, man, how awful is that, to have to sit there and wait to see if your kid's alive or not, as the buses arrive.
Yeah, I mean, sadly, how many parents went through, their own version of survivor's guilt? As I mean, just try to imagine, right? You're there, and your kid gets off, and you're so excited, but then you see a parent next to you, maybe a friend or whatever. Probably is. It wasn't a huge school. It was only a couple
Right.
hundred kids. They all had
Right.
that pretty much know each other. They saw each other at school events and whatever. Probably all went to the same church, but to see the ones next to you not, or have someone come up and give them news while you're celebrating. I mean, it's just,
Yeah.
it's gonna, the ripple effect from this is gonna be far and wide, and for a long, long time. But yeah, it's when you see what's happened. I mean, in your area, Pinal County is a very big area. It's a lot of rural, a lot of small communities and stuff. Same kind of thing.
Right.
People know each other. Do you guys, do you have a program that you do with your schools? Do you get the schools to ask you to come in? Is it something mandated? How are you guys handling that, both in the county and or the state?
Yeah, so we're not mandated, but there are programs where we come into the schools and we partner with the schools. And actually, our state has started to fund, over the past few years, started to fund more and more school resource officer positions. So they're getting the cops back in the schools, and that's over the past 2 years or so. That's been the big push, is let's get cops back in the schools, because we know that helps, and we know that these cowards usually pick softer targets rather than targets that they know are going to be hard and they're going to meet resistance. And so that's one big thing. We've also, just this year, we've got a new program where we got a grant throughout the state. A bunch of agencies got different grants to be able to link into the schools' communication systems and their camera systems, so that we can get bird's eye view. Our dispatch can actually tie into their video system to give us blow by blow. So when our officers get there, they can give us exacts. If the cameras are seeing bad guys or bad guy, they can tell us, hey, this is exactly where you need to go, and this is exactly where the problem is, so we can get there faster and solve that problem.
Wow, what a concept! I mean, to be able to be tied into that, and get that real time, recon before you show up. I mean, like say, grant awesome. This school had this teacher who had the wherewithal to be outside and give them clear orders, but that is not all the case, right? We can look at
Right.
school after. I mean, look at the one just a couple weeks ago. I think maybe it was just last week, right, in Colorado, in Denver,
Mhm.
right? You
Yeah.
you had that one where and that's what you mentioned, SROs, right? School resource officers. That's a good example where the city council had voted down not to put them in the schools.
Mhm.
Apparently, they were always having to frisk people at this school, or they were frisking, searching. Administrators were, which is we talked about it last week on the show. It was like, were they trained? Were these school administrators trained? What if they had found a gun? What if they had found some kind of threat? Do they know how to position themselves and maneuver the person to secure that? And now, so this happens. They have the shooting. And now, the superintendent just immediately gives without even going back through his board, just saying, nope, putting SROs back in. It makes me wonder. We see this ever since about 2000. We went through the big defund the police movement within this country across many
Right.
communities, and people and everything about cops was all of a sudden bad, and now it's coming back full circle and swinging back. It's not something we wanted to say, "I told you so," but I think
Right.
a lot of us knew this was going to happen.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And this is something that we discussed, even at the local level with our county commissioners, which we refer to as board of supervisors. And we would discuss it with them, letting them know that what we were seeing in law enforcement was this. And those of us who've been doing it long enough understand this because we've been through the history. Um, we saw them start to take police out of schools and started to not necessarily defund those programs, but essentially the monies for those programs did go away and were pushed into other programs. And so we started to lose having police officers in the schools. And as that started to happen, the DARE program went away as well. So you started losing the DARE program, and you started losing that personal interaction between law enforcement officers and the kids in the schools and their parents. And as that happened, you then had that generation of kids become adults. And if you notice, the timeline almost played out perfectly for 2020. So those kids that had been in school and had not had the law enforcement influence or presence where they had personal relationships, and they became adults, they were those adults that were screaming and yelling at us that we're pigs and we're racist and we're this and we're that, because essentially it was much easier for them to dehumanize us because they didn't have those personal connections.
Right.
And I think what you're seeing now is the tide is turning, and there's an understanding that that is a good thing to have, is a those cops in there to have those personal connections and human connections with those kids and their parents, and then b to have those protectors also there.
Right. It's interesting you say that, because every once in a while you'll see something on the news and they act like it's an anomaly, right? They'll show a cop, someone will get it on, one of the good times someone breaks out a cell phone camera, and they'll show a cop pull over and play some basketball or kick a soccer ball around or something
Right.
with kids in the street. That crap, crap, that happened all the time.
Yeah.
That's not uncommon. That. I mean,
Right.
I'm really talking to our people watching the show. That's where, that's community policing. and
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
and the reason why that works and why you have it is because the law enforcement officers are from the community and they have a
Right.
connection and they may know, and they maybe went to the same schools. And now in the last couple of years, every time they've had it, it's almost like it's like, oh, look, a unicorn. There's an officer being
Yeah.
friendly and nice. It's like that's what they do. You're
Right.
just, the media never portrays, the news never portrays them in that light, right?
Yeah,
they
yeah,
they
and I can tell you, I worked in a high school, and it was essentially an off-duty gig, and it was earlier on in my career. And working in that high school, you made those personal connections with those kids, and you were with them at PE. You would go play basketball with them or soccer with them or whatever. You'd get to know them. And the other thing that happened is when you had troubled kids, kids would talk to you. Yeah, kids all love talking, right? And so
Right.
they would come tell you, like, hey, we're kind of worried about so and so. He's acting weird or he's doing weird stuff. And then it would give you the opportunity to kind of intervene and go check on that person. And not necessarily that you were stopping mass shootings, but at least being able to check on that person and see, like, are they in mental health crisis, or
Right.
is something going on with them that we can intervene and maybe work with the parents on. So you had a much better read on what was going on. And as law enforcement, not only did you have a personal connection and a personal relationship, but it served the purpose of being able to also do your job more effectively as a protector and knowing kind of what's going on in the school.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it just amazes me the similarities between law enforcement and our military. I mean, when we're, out in Iraq and Afghanistan, the same thing. You get out in the street and walk and take off the helmet and the sunglasses and talk to
Mhm.
people. I mean, you're community policing essentially. You're out there getting to know them, and that may, they're not necessarily going to drive up to your front gate and give you intel on something bad happening, but you're out there walking through their shop and maybe buying an orange pop or something. They may say, hey, by the way, the guy next door does this and this or whatever.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
just you're establishing, like say, that human connection. You're not desensitized. And I know for in law enforcement it's the same thing. You're out there talking to people. Everyone's not walking around like they're a SWAT team member, and
Right.
and they see you as a father, a husband, a member of the community, someone that goes to the church, someone they see in the grocery store.
Right.
And like say, even it may just be saying, hey, I'm worried about so and so. I haven't
Yeah.
heard from so and so in a while. And it's
Yeah.
not always necessarily bad kinetic stuff. Sometimes it's looking out for the benefit of somebody else.
Right, right. And I think to your point with the military stuff, having done this for 30 years now, I was doing this job before the global war on terror started and before 9/11 happened. And pre 9/11, the military was different, right?
Mm-hmm.
The military operated in a different way because it was more conventional warfare that they were dealing with. And once 9/11 happened and once we jumped into it, what people that are not in the law enforcement world, what they fail to recognize or understand or know, just because they weren't involved in that. And what we saw is the military was coming to law enforcement, or they were activating law enforcement reserves, and they were activating them and bringing law enforcement in to train them because they recognized that we were essentially doing the same job. You guys over there overseas were going around neighborhoods looking for bad guys, and kind of what we do, going around
Right.
neighborhoods looking for bad guys, right? And you're forming intelligence through your networking, and you're forming confidential informants, and you're, like your point, you're interacting with the community to show them like, hey, we are here to help you, and help us help you. And yeah, so it's been very similar over the past couple of decades as to how we do our jobs, both the military side and the law enforcement side of policing. And I would say on the world stage, that's what the military was doing, was essentially being the world police.
Yeah. I mean, we talked about a lot, right? The military is trained to go in and fight a conventional enemy and, find, fix, finish, the enemy until they give up. And, when we got thrown into the counterinsurgency world, and you get put into a country, both Iraq and Afghanistan, that lacks any kind of military and especially civilian law enforcement, we had to act as that. And it was a lot to ask our soldiers to, we would do things like whether it's building, schools, doing a medcat mission, establish. I remember getting told one time, you got to establish a government and put a governance in place in this community. It was like, these people live in dirt, and like, you want me to put a government in place? I'm an
Right.
infantryman. Like, you tell me a target and I'll take care of it. And
Hearts and minds, hearts and
yeah,
minds.
and it was a challenge, but it was much of that. It was get to know the people. What do you need? What can I bring you so that you give me intel and don't, put an ID under me? What can I do for you to be, because you recognize that they're just people too. They just want to live in
Right.
peace, right? They want to raise
Right.
their kids and live in peace and that kind of stuff. And
Yeah.
it's like people in their own community, in your own in Arizona, in your county. I mean, people they want to be able to send their kids to school and know that
Mhm.
they're going to get home safe. They want to be able to go to church and know they can sit there and worship their faith and leave and
Yeah.
be safe. And that's the beauty of this country, right? I know, you've been overseas. When you go overseas, I've made sure every one of my kids have went overseas, that you come back and you realize how blessed and lucky and just, spoiled we are in this country, because
Oh yeah. Yeah.
we as soon as we open our eyes, really, we're taking advantage. We have so many things afforded to us that we're already way above the poorest people in this country are better off than some of the best people in a lot of countries around this world, you know.
Right. Right. Absolutely. And I think one of the things we get apathetic as Americans, right? Because we're used to what we're used to and we don't know. But I think if you look across just the globe in general, as human beings, that we have those basic wants. We want to be with our loved ones. We want to be safe. We want to be able to do the things we enjoy doing, and that's it. Like, just, but most people just leave me alone. Let me be with the people I love, and let me do the things I enjoy. And that's what they want, no matter their poverty level or what they have or don't have. Those are the basic desires of any human being. And if I think if they see something that allows them, like, as we're talking about the American soldiers, if they see the American soldiers show up and that helps those wants and needs, they're naturally going to be drawn to that and help the cause. And so, same, for our kids in our schools, they see that, okay, I have the police officer here, and that's going to help keep me safe. And their parents know that, okay, that's going to help keep my kids safe and keep our wants and desires in place. And
as long as
yeah,
our heads aren't being
just
filled with like our enemies or people in the country, as long as our heads aren't being filled that cops are bad, they're just going to kill you. They hate you and they're
Mhm.
racist, right? As long as they're not raised that way, because it really all does belong starting at home, and they see that
Yeah,
and there's good and bad in everybody, all kind of. There's no profession that makes someone perfect, right? But as long
right.
as they're not raised that way, because I'm sure you've interacted with people in your community that they've had this bad image cast and they don't know any better. They've never met a law enforcement officer and they look at you already with a
Right.
ton of skepticism and doubt, right?
Oh yeah, I can tell you. Myself, I was raised in a lower end neighborhood. We were Section 8 housing, which is government subsidized housing. My mom was a single mom. We were in a gang infested area, and it was pumped into you like the cops are the enemies because they take your family to jail. They don't let us live our lives, blah blah blah. But were you were basically coached to overlook all the bad shit that people were doing, right? Don't pay attention to the crimes being
Right.
committed and all that by the people that the cops are messing with. Just focus on the fact that the cops are coming into our neighborhood, messing with us and taking our family members away. That was the focus. But when you got down to it, what was really going on was you had people committing crimes and preying on other people, and that was being dealt with. And when I got out of that environment, it was very eye opening, because you realize that the world is so much more than that little neighborhood you're stuck in.
Oh yes, yeah, absolutely. And again, if you just gotta, I don't know, be afforded the chance to make your own mind up and just see for your own self, and hopefully you can do it before you get too far gone, or make a bad decision in life, right?
Right,
That would
right.
be that's it. Just kind of leaves it up to that. But yeah, it's it's as you look at this, and we talk as we're wrapping up here, talking about this terrible school shooting that just happened in Nashville, right after the one just happened in Denver and stuff. What advice do you have for anyone listening or watching that as a parent or has a family or loved one or works in a school themselves or anything? What how could they best prepare themselves and just to make sure that their loved one, child or whatever, is as safe as possible in case something horrible like this ever shows up on their doorstep?
Well, I think that the best thing to do is to make sure that the school administrators are at the cutting edge of all of this, right? Because with each incident that happens, we learn and we grow from that and we become better prepared. So making sure that their school administrators, their school boards are up to speed on this stuff, that they are communicating with their local law enforcement, that they are partnering with their local law enforcement to provide the safest school possible. And if they are in a community where they don't have police officers coming back into their schools, I would absolutely demand that, because that is going to only help with the issue, and it's going to help solve these problems before they start.
Okay. Okay. That's a, so you're, it pretty much is, you need to be talking to your school district and school system and making sure that they're taking this serious. Um,
Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely. And I think in today's world, what we have, I've seen this a lot in Arizona. I don't know, the rest of the country. I would assume this is going on as well in different places. But parents have stopped being so apathetic to their children and their education and what goes on at school, and they've started to become more and more involved. Where we have parents getting on those school boards where we have parents actively engaging the administrations of these schools and demanding, that the schools protect their children and do certain things. And I think that's where we need to continue. The parents have to be involved. They have to hold the administrators of these schools accountable to ensure that the safest environment possible is being provided for the children.
Yeah. Yeah. And asking the questions about like what technology is the school using, how often do they train? I mean, that definitely is stuff that they need to find out, right? Unfortunately,
Absolutely.
everything seems to be around school boards right now is about what kind of books are being put in the library. But man, that's important based on what some of the books are that are getting put in. But this seems like something that should be being asked a lot more and talked about for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And at the same point, though, I mean, right, just as much as you want to have some level of control of what is being taught to your kids is what is the environment that they're going to school in. And so involvement is the key to that.
Yeah. You can't, it's not just a running daycare to drop them off. And I think a lot of parents had their eyes open during the 2020 and COVID, right? That's where we started seeing a lot of this school board stuff happen because parents were now locked at home, working from home. Their kids were there next to them and they were starting to hear what their kids were being taught or what was being said. And I think that opened up a lot of eyes and ears. But
absolutely.
Yeah. Well, hey everyone, I want to thank so much. If you are seeing the Matt Thomas is really there behind that screen. Matt is a 30-year veteran of the Pinal County, Arizona Sheriffs Department. He is also now an award-winning author. I think he's up for Pulitzer. I'm not sure. I could be wrong, but it's Interceptors: The Untold Fight Against the Mexican Cartels. You can find it on Amazon and Barnes & Noble and all the different bookstores out there. Be sure and check. And what is your website, Matt, that they can find it at?
It is onetimenation.com, and that's where they could see my bio. I have a little video bump piece there that's just some cool guy stuff, and then they could find the book there if they want a signed copy.
There you go. So you can get the signed copy, and definitely worth a read to learn about the cartels and really what's happening on there. So One Time Nation, Matt Thomas. Matt, I want to you got Katie Pavlich doing a forward for the book too. So
yeah, Katie, I forgot to mention that Katie did my forward. Katie's a good friend of mine, and I asked her if she would do me the honor, and she jumped all over it. So Katie did my forward for me, and people will enjoy that. Her and I have done some stuff out here together in Arizona. And I just wanted to apologize for the black screen. I feel bad, man, but the internet apparently thinks I'm too ugly.
I guess we could have just like given you a cool like nickname, and people would have thought we were trying to keep your hide your identity or something. Because
yeah, there you go.
Next time we're gonna have you on, I'm gonna have like an emoji ready to just put there in your place. So if you don't send me one, I'm going to come up with one, and it's going to be how you're represented to all. But well, hey, Matt, thank you so much. You've joined us for a couple episodes. I really appreciate you giving us the time. I appreciate everyone else tuning in and watching and listening. Be sure and check out our sponsors, Alpha Elite Performance, where you can put in Elite 15 and get 15% off of your great order over there from both Matt and my friend Travis. Great supplements. Also check out Gear for Grunts, Red Rum Sport Fishing, boohammer.com. All of our great sponsors. Want to thank Matt again for coming on and giving us some of your time. Love that we stay in touch, and your perspective on the ground or in the desert, however you want to call it, on just what's happening out there and what's happening in from your perspective of 30 years of law enforcement. So thank you, Matt.
Absolutely.
Thank you for everyone tuning in.
Thank you.
And be sure and keep checking out and following us on the socials, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter. We'll keep doing episodes and putting them up. Thank you, Matt, and you and everyone else have a good night.
Thank you.
Well, that wraps up another episode of the Stu and the Nunn Show, and we hope you had as much fun listening to it as we did hosting it for you. Don't forget to like our Facebook page and follow us on Twitter. You can find all these links at stewandthenunn.com. We will talk to you again next Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Central. Also, we'd like to thank our sponsors, Commodity Outdoors, Veteran Outdoors, Enlisted 9 Fight Company, Warrior Media Solutions, and boohammer.com. Thank you again, and have a good night.